This is 101, week 13, part 2. Let's take a look at this Berkman piece. Okay, so be positive. Look on the bright side. Stay focused on success. So goes our modern mantra. A mantra is like a thing that you say to yourself all the time, over and over again. So one of the first things I want to draw your attention to is be positive, look on the bright side, stay focused on success. That's not his opinion. It sounds like it's his opinion, because that's how he starts his essay off. Be positive, look on the bright side, stay focused on success. But then he says, so goes our modern mantra, meaning that's what other people say, right? A lot of people in America say, be positive, focus on the positive. Sorry, I walked away from the page. Be positive, look on the bright side, stay focused on success. So goes our modern mantra. In other words, that's the thing a lot of people say to themselves over and over again. But no, it's not what he's saying. That is not his point. Now because there's gonna be a temptation here with Berkman, of you're gonna see that's his first sentence. It's a very clear, obvious opinion. That must be his main point because it's his first sentence of his essay. It's not. He disagrees with that, actually. He starts his essay off by telling you what other people think, and then he's going to tell you what he thinks. It's a very common way to start the essay. It's the same thing I tell you guys to do. Tell me what Plato thinks, and then tell me how much you agree or disagree with it. So what he's doing is he's starting off his essay by saying what a lot of Americans think. He's going to spend the rest of the essay disagreeing with that. Okay, so let's take a look. Be positive, look on the bright side, stay focused on success, so goes our modern mantra. But perhaps the true path to contentment is like happiness, perhaps the true path to contentment is to learn to be a loser. Or maybe, and I think this shouldn't be "are," this should be "or." I think that's a typo. Or maybe, or we may, I'm sorry, maybe it should be a period here in capital R. Are we maybe just looking for happiness in the wrong way? So he says the true path to contentment is learning to be a loser. Are we maybe just looking for happiness in the wrong way? So he thinks most people stay focused on the positive, but he thinks actually it's the right answer to happiness is the opposite of that. Okay, cool. So let's jump in here and see what we've got to deal with Berkman. Now I told you guys when you do your essays to start with examples. I'm not sorry, to always include examples, right? You have a quote and you put a quote in your own words and you put an example. Now what Berkman does, he does examples. But usually when I ask you guys for examples, I'm looking for an example that's like a sentence or two or three. Now, when you write a longer thing, you might want some longer, more complicated examples. And Berkman's writing a longer thing than you guys are. I'm not asking you for a 7-page single-spaced essay with photographs. So Berkman has an example, but his example's long. So it's like a whole paragraph and then another whole paragraph, and he has big examples, which is fine. I think it makes for entertaining reading. It's a perfectly enjoyable thing. The only reason I don't tell you to do that is because students who are allowed to write long examples, the example becomes a long, rambly story that eats up their whole essay. And by the time they give me a gigantic example explaining, it tends to be a summary of a movie, for example. So they'll be like, this is just like that movie. And then a student will do like a 2-page summary of Avengers Endgame. And then they'll go, see, Plato would agree with that. And I'm like, oh my God, you forgot to write an essay. You just summarized the Avengers. So it's a little bit dangerous for students writing short essays. But for something longer like this, it's a perfectly fine thing to do. And again, I mentioned in the first week of class, the way to do your essays, you can make them longer by by having multiple examples or larger examples. And a lot of books do that, right? Like sometimes, a lot of times I'll be like, I think movies work like this, and then I'll go through a whole movie as an example and a whole other movie, and it's like, these examples are pages and pages and pages. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so this is his example. In an unremarkable business park outside the city of Ann Arbor in Michigan stands a poignant, that means it's like emotional, it makes you feel sad, stands a poignant memorial to humanity's shattered dreams. It doesn't look like that from the outside, though. Even when you get inside, which members of the public rarely do, it takes a few moments for your eyes to adjust to what you're seeing. It appears to be a vast and haphazardly organized supermarket. Haphazardly means like random. Haphazardly organized supermarket. Along every aisle, gray metal shelves are crammed with thousands of packages of food and household products. There is something unusually cacophonous. That's like noisy, but he means like metaphorically noisy, like it's so crazy in there, it's like a bunch of loud noises. There's something unusually cacophonous about the displays, and soon enough you work out the reason. Unlike in a real supermarket, there is only one of each item, and you won't find many of them in a real supermarket anyway. They are failures, products withdrawn from sale after a few weeks or months because almost nobody wanted them. In the product design business, the Storehouse, operated by a company called GfK Custom Research North America, has acquired a nickname: the Museum of Failed Products. Okay, so this is a paragraph-sized example, and he's starting with the example, which is something you can do in your essays. Although I tend to I tend to think it's better in an academic essay to start with quotes. But I understand he starts with example. You can really do. I mean, the things I taught you on how to do an essay, I didn't insist they be in any particular order. You can rearrange the order and do all kinds of things. It's possible to, for example, start with an example, and then put Plato in your own words, and then say, or the way Plato would put it himself, and then you could put Plato's quotation, right? Like there's all kinds of, there's different orders you can do it in. But I encourage you, I showed you a way to do it that's like pretty easy. You don't have to think that much about it. But one of the things I emphasized with that worksheet, that 101 worksheet, was the way you can those elements I told you. As long as you're doing those things, you're in good steading. So in good standing, something, I don't know. Anyway, as long as you're doing those things, you're good. But you can kind of do them in any order, and you can do them as many times as you want. There's all kinds of options and variations. But I know students love a good formula. They're just like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I don't like telling people what to do. I like giving them options, and students hate that because then they don't know what to choose. And anyway, but that's how I like to do. I think it treats you like adults, and it's healthy for you. But I gave you that sheet, and since students so desperately want a formula, I gave you one. Introduce the quote, put the quote in your own words. Give me some examples to explain the quote. Tell me, how much you agree or disagree with it and why. Give reasons and give examples to support your reasons, and right. And then consider objections, and right. But you can do this stuff in any order you want. Okay. So that's his example. He has a giant example, and it's about a weird museum that, instead of collecting paintings or old cars, collects supermarket items that were failures, right? Meaning somebody invented a product and nobody bought it. And this is a museum of all the products that failed. You can't find this stuff in stores because nobody makes it anymore because nobody bought it. And it's just a weird museum of failures. One of the things he's going to be talking about in this essay is failure. And so that's why he started out with this sort of detailed example. And he's going to go into some more detail in the next section. But I like the sentence that starts the next paragraph. He says, this is consumer capitalism's graveyard, the shadow side to the relentlessly upbeat, success-focused culture of modern marketing. So marketing is advertising. Capitalism is the sort of the system in which you live and we live, which is that sort of companies want to make as much money as humanly possible all the time, everywhere. And they generally do that by making products and then selling them to people. So consumer capitalism is exactly what I just described. It's buying and selling things, objects, physical objects, because you're consuming them, right? You eat them, you consume them, and they go away. So consumer capitalism is focused on buying and selling of objects, not necessarily food, but objects. He says this is the consumer capitalism's graveyard. It's because you see all the things available at the supermarket, but you forget that there's like a million products that failed, and then it's like a graveyard because it's like basically a collection of things that failed, that died. Consumer capitalism generates a lot of stuff. Sometimes people don't buy that stuff. And so this is a museum that has one example of every product that people didn't buy, which is really interesting, actually. He says it's the shadow side to the relentlessly upbeat, success-focused culture of modern marketing. What he means by marketing there is advertising. Marketing is advertising, commercials and posters and stuff for buying shit. They tend to be real positive. Buy our product. It's the best. They're very positive. Like, if you buy this, it'll fix your life. It'll help you. Hey, you need a new car. Treat yourself or whatever. That's marketing. Advertising involves a lot of positive feeling. But what they never talk about in advertising is all the things that failed. You never see a commercial that's like, this product is probably, we're going out of business, and you know what, this sucks, don't buy it. Nobody does that. Advertising is very positive. And he says this is sort of the shadow side. This museum of failed products is like the thing that advertising doesn't want to think about, which is sometimes when you have a product or an idea, it fails. All right, pick it up in the next video.